Looking at 1 Nephi chapter 4, we're going to look at verses 6 and 11 together. Verse 6 is, "And I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do." Then 11, "And the Spirit said unto me again, Behold, the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Yea, and I knew that he had sought to take away mine own life. Yea, and he would not hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, and he also had taken away our property." Who is the writer of these lines, and who understood the law of Moses this well? Alright, everybody knows the commandment, thou shalt not kill. Joseph Smith, I'm sure, knew the commandment, thou shalt not kill. I think that growing up, primary children or outside of the church, I think that is a very popular commandment, thou shalt not kill. I think intrinsically we all know that we should not take the life of another person. But who is the author of 1 Nephi, and who knew the loopholes in the Jewish law? Let's look at what I'm talking about. I say loopholes for lack of a better term, but there's more to the law than just thou shalt not kill. Alright, Exodus 21:12-14 says, "He that smiteth a man so that he die shall be surely put to death. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die." So there is a provision in the law that allowed, actually, in cases of really non-premeditated murder, an asylum or a city where they could flee, a safe city, if you will, outside of Jerusalem, and they could stay there until their trial. If they were convicted of this non-premeditated murder, they would often have to stay outside of the city until the current high priest would die. Then they could return. But what are the terms of this provision? The first term of this provision, "And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand." And the second provision, that if a man come not presumptuously upon his neighbor. So let's look at both of those. So defense number 1, "And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I appoint thee a place whither he shall flee." So Nephi specifically says in verse 11, "Behold, the Lord hath delivered him into mine hands, into thy hands." So this is exactly verbatim from the law. He's quoting the law here. He is literally taking the words right out of Exodus and saying, "He was delivered to me. This is not something that I chased him down to kill him." Now, I'm not here to defend Nephi or to prosecute Nephi under the law or to be a judge of the law. I'm just saying it's obvious that Nephi is making a defense according to the law. The second defense, "But if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die." So Nephi specifically says, I was not coming presumptuously. He says, "And I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do." So whoever is writing this knows the law explicitly and is trying to at least make some sort of defense for his actions. So, like I said, I don't know whether he would be there wasn't even 2 witnesses, so it would be tough to even bring a trial against Nephi in the first place. And I don't know what any high priest would say in this situation, but neither did Joseph Smith, is my point. But Nephi at least had some recollection of the law and had some understanding of the law, enough that 30 years down the road, he's laid out a very defensible argument, not only in his defenses on how he was able to kill Laban, but also in previous chapters we've already highlighted that Laban committed infractions that were worthy of death that Nephi goes on to talk about in verse 11. So the question is, to me, not whether or not Nephi is guilty, but who wrote this? Who understood the law so well that they could make an actual defense in the law of Moses? Was it Nephi, who is now 50 years old, 30 years later, writing this, who grew up in Jerusalem, who had a first-hand account of the actual proceedings? Or was it 22-year-old Joseph Smith, who grew up in upstate New York under the U.S. Constitution and was known by his mother to not be inclined to the reading of books?